Hello, humanity. This is about how to also be hyper positive onto and as the species body of individual bodies, volume science generated, and also positive onto itself here. Or Earth's a special difference. Through ourselves is forced from here. And because we have been using systems other than its own, and it demonstrates that. But then we have also been using systems tactically ulterior from its own. And so it's demonstrating that too. And a breaching method knew that it would be demonstrating that to us. It knew that nature itself would show Americans before we were America. It knew that everyone was going to come out of those roles with laws and the difference of the internationally monitored conversations that forced that, the international companies, the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, and then America's founders were born. Everyone had been roles with such. Against Native Americans first, you have to understand that. They don't understand that because they don't understand how it was against the people that were a part of that too, since semi-ancient times. See, this is more probably and practically what to theorize, to take as expertise, even of the religions. See, they're using the experts for things they're not supposed to be used for. They're using exceptions and exception nature faked, tactically ulterior from how nature uses it. You guys were child abused to have replaced what our founders left declassified. For example, why and how we're not supposed to refer to any founder. We're supposed to know that there was a plural. There were a plural amount of founders, plural, behind James Madison and his plan. And when nature itself shows us that the Native Americans, even if they didn't know about his plan, there are proofs that some of the Native Americans were part of that plural group. But even if they didn't know about it, they were all our founders too. But the only one that we know the name of specifically behind that plan was James Madison. And the experts were supposed to preserve this. Our directions to not allow people to not entertain people saying that other were our founders. People say, "Oh, the founders owned slaves." See that's why they have our founders framed. They had slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13. And then America's founders were born. And even what we know about that, you guys are changing, hiding what we know about that, using your knowledge of good and evil. Or who was so and such, who was whipped over there. In other words, you guys are angering the kids, making them content, tactical terrier from how you should be. You have the sciences, individually, even the religions. The beginning of the Old Testament says right up front has a guide to reading it. No one even knows about it. It says only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it, and that's before the part with Adam and Eve and their generation, which it doesn't tell us to defend that part. It tells us to defend the part that says, with it only defend here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. So Rome was forced to defend that by attacking. I don't know. I mean, in other words, or they putting it public that they put a warrant on the head of Queen Mary, just because she had published a book of Psalms in English for the first time in England, because the church was still running. The church in England from Rome. Part of the reason that we're still running it is because Rome's trying to fix the human species body's volume science system, the Campus Martius system. But now it's from off the campuses of the ancient republic. They have been forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to hyper-additional collusion/s, replacing what our short words, our syntax, therefore our functions, should be and be led by. For example, how it is functional being hyper-invisible but still discernible. How we are distinct from the other species' bodies, but also non-distinct from them. Even fish have eyes that look almost exactly like humanity's. And we are simultaneous with them. But we are also demonstrated to by that which is neither us nor them, while it is all things anyway. We are demonstrated to that reason is reliant upon the needs to communicate about the scientific value of this distinct but non-distinct and simultaneous / therefore hyper simultaneous too identity of value / value progression that all things are. Well, not, but anyway. Here, or our value is forced from here, from being systems tactical ulterior from its own, the one that generates all group differences, therefore. It is generating individual species bodies, each one made up of a whole bunch of individuals, so that we could discern when we are using systems other than it's generating all group differences. And why and how it demonstrates that too. And there are proofs that the ancients appreciated this. This is how to cause evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. Years before Russians and Ukraine were killing each other, and this war now, and Palestine and Israel. I wrote a counter script because of the World Trade Center attack. And there is a way. Like imagine a parent walks into the room and all the countries' names, and that can only be operated by locations, areas, and states under names. All kids of the parent, and they're all hurt by people from off them when the parents were away. This is exactly what it's like with the what the religious messengers were speaking about. The beginning of the Quran too has a part that's a guide, dictate to how to appreciate the book. No one even knows about it. It's just like with the Old Testament. Distinctly at the beginning of the Quran, it says, all that matters is if one is honest about what they're going to call this scientific value. God. I'm not using the word God because there are proofs that this goes with the science, that they're trying to, they didn't have means to preserve because already we were a systems tactical terrier from how nature appreciates individual group differences and human species body of individual bodies. Note how none of us, even all together, we don't have control over the human species body's volume science the way it's being generated. And know how only locations, areas, and states could operate the names of countries. And when they make subject treatments, make relative subject treatments, there is a method for countries A through Z to agree to blame a hyper-foreign breaching method and discern its body as a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, even if there's not one standing. There is enough. This also will give the the laws aren't capable of being read properly because of the natures of organized crimes and of methods of them left uncharged. Like relative to where and to how they have black people's whites of eyes. They have replaced what James Madison and our founders communicated for us to communicate about how a breaching method reassigned what nature communicates with black people's whites of eyes, when nature is not only itself as criminal insidiousness nature. This breaching method did things and does things to and through countries A through Z to maintain styles, needs, and nature's roles with it. Only remember that simultaneously need to keep nature's demonstrations about the breaching method and what it causes and keeps, which is also all kinds of negative value nature, progressive acts and natures, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be blamed on other things, others, ourselves. This is also why we haven't addressed recorded relative delusions that people of psychiatry have at countries right through world wars. They have collusions, the ones with badges and ones with gavels associated with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, out the state of Connecticut corrections offices and judicial branch offices since before they were built, relative to use of location / every single place the human species body has a body standing. So you guys are a bunch of kids fighting and pretending to be adults, acting. Suits and ties count as exception. All aggression syntax and all calmness syntax. Tactical terrier from how nature shows us. Nature shows. So where we can put down a temporary, probably would be just increasing it itself too. It doesn't have to be temporary. I mean, temporary position of it. A human species body company that's going to work for the human species body everywhere it is at once. One of the problems here is that the quote experts, they can't defend their takes on any subject treatment and or nor the people countering them without, like, for example, there are things that they're not allowed to speak about, and they're valuing that at countries A through Z because they hide behind and through that details as a breaching method showed them they need to. For example, those details about how and why, the details generated too from how that one single detail they replaced James Madison's plan, for example, as the only correct answer for what caused the American Revolution, what caused the Declaration of Independence, what caused the Constitutional Convention, even what caused the Civil War. There was slavery still entrenched? No. Northern colonies and southern colonies. There are proofs right through the Revolution. It was against the law. The laws of internationally monitored conversations, the companies involved, the sense and sensibilities of overt criminal enterprise, private ones, things on and off the record, the terrorists, the difference of guilt is also manifest right with everyone's subject treatment because the breaching method was inseparable from every crime scene. This is how for a method that keeps itself, it keeps all sides of criminal and civil cases, the interbranch, the intelligence, already having had collusions with the same sequence shifts and news at the same time, names next to and at all natures of crime scenes, and note how networks are constantly next to crime scenes, even preemptively when they're not involved with it as a crime scene. And that's increasingly keeping, innocent people that whether they're speaking good about the businesses or not, they're bringing them involved, incapable of affording details proper. Self-valuing sequence shifts is the main thing. So no one knows how to speak for countries A, for differences A through Z. And then they use those differences too. That's why I went with the isms. You guys have this breaching method caused the world wars too. You guys can't explain the Civil War properly. You can't explain the world wars. Then you have to self-value. Oh, because there could be nuclear threats. We know about the most about this. But someone has to, and they have to try to speak for Palestinian children because everyone has a symbol of it. Leaving out the breaching, the nature of sophistication, you don't leave out the elderly, the middle age. At countries A through Z, we have a breaching method upon us. It is manifest as a species body. We can move there real quick, but not when everyone wants to entertain. Uses of phrases that have relativity to groupings of humanity like World Court, when they didn't even have black pupils, whites of eyes correct yet. They're still criminally foreign impulse roles with psychiatry, right through world wars. They hadn't to defend themselves, to get away with it. They have to self-validate all kinds of predicate acts with facts methods recorded, all kinds of war crime acts and methods. And the differences of guilt, because there are a whole bunch of countries. So it's not, in other words, they're making the guilt anything but the proper way, leaving out the hyper-foreign. In other words, which is, even if it's not about relative to a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, individually grouped in together, everyone has been self-evaluating. Logic and natures of logic that can't defend themselves and afford that identity of sophistication, syntactically appreciated properly, relative to how there is this identity of value progression generating individual bodies, individual species bodies, made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. And it's showing us we could use systems other than its own, let alone tactically ulterior than its own. But it will demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, as the breaching method knew it would. At the same time, with those containing demonstrations of itself. Nature demonstrates to us all those crazy laws that hurt native difference, which is nature's demonstrating to us we are all hyper-native. We're all not Native American. And Native American rights are abridged sickly distinctly from our own, but also sickly non-distinctly. And the president slash chief too. He wants to communicate about what he could do, what he can't do. In other words, he could send in the military with paintball guns, give kids that have no money, people stacked in buildings in New York City, for example, get everyone on the same page. Means come out of nowhere. Little kids had means to discern since we were little kids. Fake sciences. We are sensitive, we speak for others. That's why part of the, and then they do things that no one could respond to it properly by uses of corner and little tricks, exploiting where and how we are a value progression. Whiting forensics is a Connecticut place involved with state police families. Since I was a kid, increasingly involved with crime scenes and people involved with predicate acts against me. Wethersfield police attached me to fake conversations with themselves and being there at the Wethersfield police station as a kid and as an adult. I went there and had someone, my Saudi friend, Wethersfield police forced me to fake conversation. I never had a word of conversation with older police brother of Amanda. Reportedly, they're brothers. Eric Mendez, and he has an older brother. I never had a class with either of them. Never saw them around campuses. They try to make a couple of fake exceptions with both of them. Nonverbal, in other words, nonverbal was the one who pretended me to conversation. He's got roles with a principal child abuser and a Phil Colot and others on my street recorded confessed nonverbal. I never responded verbally. I never had a word of conversation with a Phil Colot. He's involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with some sexual medical offenders of kids with foreign and domestic, and people that recorded him and confessed and demonstrated him involved with them, with next to the World Trade Center the night before. Other ways long term. I don't know if he knows about that, but that's what it is too. That's also recorded, his collusions with some Mendez police and people involved with the with the campuses, including with the security, involved with all kinds of sexual and medical offenders of kids. And and this is relative to other people having been using them remotely. And to keep that hid, They make them run into library, like the families of fire departments, of intelligence. They all run in, and including if those are undercover intelligence. They're just faking transcripts at Harvard Hospital, for example, at triages, intercities with the same ones involved, also with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has roles with World Trade Center predicate acts. But to do it proper, we're not alone. And then even other countries involved, there's another using and having used them remotely, criminally foreign influence. More scams and pilfering of Medicaid, Social Security, etc. Come through intelligence roles, ones with badges and ones with gavels, and their family members involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, all sides of criminal and civil cases, even when they're not involved with the criminal enterprises, they're involved with the same names, with the same sequences, same predicate acts with facts, method /S, collusion /S, recorded. They have to get away with this by switching names at the branch, preventing writing while they've been stacking fake transcripts in databases through time. These are increasingly people with Washington, D.C., involved with two speech class teachers I had, with people who have roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases, interstates, involved with the World Trade Center attack, with the Saudis too, increasingly with Wethersfield Police, involved with multiple police departments, personally and professionally, with the same house /S, increasingly at corners of the streets, like in people, like with syntax, collusion / there are predicate acts with facts, methods generated by that original method that had, for example, slavery non-distinctly, distinctly northern colonies and southern, but also non-distinctly, roles even with that. And then America's founders were born. Still, other things, others ourselves, that quote experts are forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading people to blame it on. How they debate evidences. They can't afford to have discern. The breaching method shows them that. Forgiveness is because campuses A through Z sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly. They replaced answers that are true, the only one, right where James Madison's plan is the only correct answer. And there are all kinds of self-value collusion /S too. That the people don't even realize with self-value roles with that replaced. It wasn't about a T-tax. You're gonna go tell the kids it's about a T-tax. You're telling the kids too, and the adults and the elderly at the same time. It's about a T-tax. You're using the truth for a lie, the way the breaching method forced, and the way our founders directed not to be. Our founders directed us to understand that, how, and why. The only founder that they had the security to let us know the name of was James Madison. And he did not have free speech once he was a president /chief too. He still didn't have free speech. Nobody did. Otherwise, that body would have been sensed, including if that body was a majority of people, and would have been easily adapted to by the breaching method, including if it was everyone. We just step back and look at what was entrenched relative to what's entrenched. The people of New York City, the young kids, the middle-aged, and the adults, anyone who's honest, they're the people of the industries offensively. Because they already spoke with passions or with calmness. Psychos as psychopaths. Now, these are the people that, I'm not a doctor of psychiatry, but they're recorded criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, collusion /S with why and how. They have roles with why and how. Our founders, were they communicated as true always. They have it replaced. They have mass faking transcripts and collusions with the breaching method uses of databases since before computers, since before America's founders were born. since they from off the campuses and all of the republic for which we stand in ancient times, from all for the republic for which humanity stood, they forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded that abridged, but they did that through themselves, through others. So then they would hide that in the future, and they could show them means and needs to hide further and further details and how it can be discerned. It shows names on all sides of criminal and civil cases in the interbranch, in the intelligence tied to them, foreign and domestic, how they're actually missed on off the campuses. They're directed to hide such lies, such things that are not even real things. They're directed, in other words. So what we do is put down a plan, and we start paying attention to what they're not allowed to speak about like nuclear have to keep putting water to keep something from getting too hot. So they can't be honest, and they're valuing they're not allowed to speak about things, but they're going to speak and pretend they have free speech anyway. Anyway, that's why you have to follow mandated law, because there's exploitations of that. And there's a lot of leaking through communications, because this preaching method used confessions since before the church used confessions. It forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the only people who could operate the phenomenon of countries' names A through Z to blame other things, others, or selves. So each side has sick people, but they could be healed. But we have to listen to what they say, adding in, you know, consciousness of how this preaching method is using everyone remotely, and then their self-valued defenses of, if we pay attention, criminally foreign influence, fact, achieving nature, quality aspects in nature, only because it was forced on them too. It was forced on you guys to pretend things are debatable that are not, by the experts, and the difference of the conclusions of the experts or the people attacking them. Too. Mass behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. Psychopaths, per the not a doctor of it, per the dictionary definition of it. They have been touching little kids to fake conversations and ties to doctors. And they've been doing it too, distinctly to the kids they deal with, those doctors. Harvard Hospital has many people involved with Adam Lanza, with organized crimes, with child sexual and medical offenders of kids. Also with victims advocates associated with the Sandy Hook victims, and with digital crimes and whiting forensics involved with them, and with Sandy Hook promises, and with whiting forensics, and with the Facebook page of a principal upskirt nature I recorded involved with much worse digital crimes and organized crimes. Also with the family members of multiple courts that are personally and professionally involved with the Leahy family of doctors, involved also with foreign and domestic countries, overt federal criminals, their family members at Harvard Hospital and other campuses putting fake things in databases, fake conversations with me too. This is also relative evidences, because these are people involved with Israel and with Palestine as collusion / yes, right through world wars, are our own people against our own. Part of it is because they were child abused. In other words, we're supposed to have forgiveness because we can observe there is a torture, extortion, in fact, achieving nature slavery, therefore physical slavery method, leveraged upon the people of New York City. There are collusions of people giving examples of how they could be successful. They are speaking about success, Black people. We're supposed to get our founders' voice declassified as their communications, as their voice. Then all can rejoice, because nature itself will show us what to do. We have to address, in other words, all kinds of scams too. We have to address because these are ones with badges and gobbles. They already invested, the prisons too. The prisons have collusions with crime scenes through time, increasingly with collusions with their patients and criminals before they were caught. One's in the same prison too. Sandy Hook has a prison in Sandy Hook that has collusions with their patients and criminals before, to force them too. They have collusions too with falsified police reports and cover-ups for them with the differences of guilt that were used to force a principal upskirt nature, a principal being involved further with more then and now, and some retired police chief Centron. Little Coward's got his daughter, Jessica Centron. I've never been around her, I don't know her. Involved too with people all along Route 3, increasingly involved with the state judicial branch offices, conjunctions to it and to that, like Route 3, who are also involved all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield. In ways relative, because they also have replaced at founding locations across America. James Madison's plan, which is the only correct answer. James Madison and the founders behind him counter-extorted George Washington, and he was agreeing to use their plan. In other words, everyone was counter-extorting each other. They had to an extent. That's why they had to leave slavery entrenched. It's not just because it was a breaching method behind slavery. It had roles with all kinds of things that no one wanted roles with, but if they didn't have the roles as their positions with it, they were sensed and hurt, including if they were a majority of people, including if they are a united country. And it's easily adapted to any grouping of countries that tries to have syntax for humanity, while locations, areas, and states, still systems, tactical traits. That's all it's going to be. So in other words, we can send in the food right away. Even the Israeli people will want to do this. Everyone just wants security, but it doesn't come. It comes through fact, human nature, quality, using what is true always, using why we are a Brit, using how we can blame at the same time a name that is not A through Z. Have effects from it. It's going to be manifest. We're going to, we're going to restrip all kinds of wealth employed through psychiatry, for example. Now, I want to show you guys how to think for them. I should have been holding this back because this is all stuff, people don't give away their ideas. And I'm wasting my time. But this is also recorded because I've been asking you guys since before the World Trade Center attack, every year since. I've been trying to get people on paper because people are too afraid to address what I recorded with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Connecticut's judicial branch office and corrections offices in Wethersfield, Connecticut, intercities and intra-cities, and inter and intra campuses, and with the names next to it. They have rules of predicate acts with facts. Force, check, turn, and persuaded. They'll tell you this, but you have to ask them correctly. And the news attached me to fake conversations with themselves, for example. WFSB, a CBS affiliate. It's a bunch of people tied to and as Gail King. I don't know her at all, but a bunch of people tied to her and her family and conjunctions to her are involved with Central Connecticut State University and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. That's in New Britain, Connecticut. As the ones involved intercities through time, putting fake predicate acts in databases. And they have the interreligious nutbags. And we're going to address this because they force fake sides. People, dishonestly going into other people's conversations, searching their words to do, as collusions to break what came first, hide what came first, what the actual value is of things, pretending to be, we have differences of opinions, and they're just keeping the details, collusion / yes. Where employments of differences like expert are used where it's not expert. We're going to pay attention to the delusions and the criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature that psychiatry has, interagencies too, worse than criminal incompetence with black pupils, whites of eyes, the predicate acts with facts, method / S that is manifest at countries A through Z. So a bunch of styles of fake theater following fake theater that they've only seen. Pretend that science spoke. Get woke, get hyper woke. There's a difference between woke and hyper woke. This is with the president. See, the president slash chief, Obama, and Trump. I don't want to bring in Biden because they have an officer Hunter. It was not the son of President slash Chief Biden, Hunter, but it was through administrations that the FBI Director Robert Luskin and various courts and their families and involved with the World Trade Center attack with other countries, also per worse, through their roles through time with border states, families, and border countries, also time collusion slash S, where they go into the campus, they'd be next to them. Their time collusion had live progressions, but not per what they pretend. And then if someone speaks about it, they're showing, look, you can just pretend you're hiding the nuclear things, yeah, well, whatever. That's why they have so many fire department families involved at the same time. And so many reported sexual partners of some of the women investigators, and their educators involved, intercities and intra-cities as evidences. There's one with the name, there are men and women that use the name Bobby, and with next to Central Connecticut State University, involved with a bunch of people with a leasing agent, her kid, involved with people from MIT, people involved with databases, people involved with corruption. And then they want to go into have databases, things like that. All kind of corruption with people involved with technology and databases at Central Connecticut State University, as people involved with organized crimes with databases, and with the Leahy family, has also prosecutors and judges since I was a little kid, with people from Central Connecticut State University in Brighton, Connecticut, involved planting evidence on all sides of my house, as ones involved with World Trade Center predicate acts and fake transcripts of me. The interbranch forged and switched names and sequence refused to identify themselves. But this is all part of evidences we're going to have, because this is the problems they have there too. They have the little voices. They stand up and Harvard speaking, a Palestinian representative. They're being used to censor the breaching method. They can't speak about law, but as collusion slash S, black pupils. We're gonna force them to speak about the law. We're gonna have to be lawyers. Lawyers have all kinds of wire crime acts methods and collusions too, with all sides of criminal and civil cases. There's a Trantola, all kinds of you have a simple words, short words. They change it to a conspiracy theory. Now they're changing the whole subject and pretending it's debatable, to pretending they're legitimately trying to do. Increasingly, they're confessing stuff and pretending other. They sought me out. I don't know what they're pretending. I barely had words at all with him. And I want a response for why I can't get a response for the interbranch forging against switching names, forcing roles with child abusers, leaders, and kids, proven years apart. And more then and now, I recorded involved. Get them the heck on paper. Watch what I caught them doing too with the families there, including the security of the campuses, and how I know that. What are they doing with the shopping centers too? We'll get them on paper.